Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto Was a Demigod in the Justice League, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
You're not such a bad guy after all, are you? Naruto said. What's that supposed to mean? Batman narrowed his eyes at him. Instead of replying, the blonde man slurped loudly on a large number of noodles at the same time. It was Wonder Woman that answered his question. Behind that mean glare of yours, there is a nice personality hidden. When Naruto made a thumbs-up gesture at her showing that her words were spot on, Batman's glare intensified. The four of them were currently in the Chinatown district of Boston, in a Chinese restaurant. Batman had been the one to direct Naruto to that place after he asked if Earth had a dish known as ramen. Thus, thanks to Batman, he was now in the middle of inhaling his 12th bowl of ramen. Even Batman's poker face began to falter at the sight of the ever-increasing mountain of empty bowls stacked on the table. In contrast, the ever-gluttonous fox was not eating. QB was lying stretched on his back in Wonder Woman's lap, letting out quiet growls of content from the belly rub she was giving him. Finally, Naruto put down on the table the 12th empty bowl and exhaled loudly in bliss. Are you finally done eating? Batman asked. Though his facial expression could not be seen due to his face being covered by his mask, even while he had been eating, everyone could hear the reluctance in his voice when he spoke. I would like to eat more, but it's enough for now. I can sense there are only 2 employees working in the kitchen at this late hour. I've already troubled them enough by ordering 12 bowls of ramen at once. Batman and Wonder Woman looked at each other strangely. This guy was despicable enough to extort Superman of $4 million, but now he was worried about overworking 2 cooks at a restaurant. They did not know what to think of him. Right at that moment, an alarming news report came up on the TV installed above the counter. A dangerous hostage situation is developing at the federal building in Metropolis. So far, the Ultra-Humanite has refused to speak with negotiators. A freak of science, the Ultra-Humanite is reportedly a genius who is also extremely dangerous. Batman and Wonder Woman jumped up to their feet. But although the situation was urgent, Wonder Woman could not help being amused when she saw that the fox cub in her lap had not fallen off when she sat up. He was still sitting perpendicularly on her lap as if he was glued to her thighs. Still, she could not afford to play around at that moment. She took the fox in her arms and handed him over to Naruto. Do not fry this tracker too. At least if you want to get your gold tomorrow. Batman said and handed Naruto a bat-shaped tracking device. By the way, if you need any help, I'm here. We can discuss the price later, based on contribution. Naruto offered while taking back a grumpy and unwilling fox from Wonder Woman's hands. No thank you, Batman said categorically. We can handle this. Then, turning towards the Amazon, he said, Wonder Woman, let's go. Asterism. We don't need your help, he said. We can handle this, he said. Wahaha. QB laughed evilly from atop Naruto's shoulder. Luckily, he and Naruto were conversing in their native language because otherwise, QB would have gotten into real trouble for making fun of the current situation like that. In front of them, Batman was lying on his back on a bed in the watchtower unconscious, his body a sweaty mess. During the fight against the metahuman criminals hired by Lex Luthor, he had been bitten by Copperhead, who injected him with his venom. Batman had almost died. The venom antidote is working. Martian Manhunter said in relief, and, not long after that, Batman regained his consciousness. Welcome back, Superman said. We were afraid we lost you. Luthor and the others, what happened? They got away. All but Copperhead. Martian Manhunter answered. I'm heading down to Strikers to interrogate him, Superman added. Alright, let's go, Batman said and tried to sit up, but Superman stopped him. No, you're staying here. That venom almost killed you. So you're staying here. Batman glared at him but did not continue to argue and sat back on the bed. However, after Superman left, Batman still did as he wanted. Despite the words of consolation from the Martian, he went straight to the computer and tracked down the location of the Injustice gang through the tracking device that he had secretly planted on Lex Luthor. I know this must be hard for you, feeling vulnerable. You're the only one of us without special powers. But you don't need to prove yourself. You're a valued member of this team and we're only trying to. Batman cut off Martian Manhunter's words midway. I'm taking the shuttle. Unless you want to try and stop me. The two looked at each other in the eyes for 2 very long seconds before the Martian Manhunter backed off. Asterism. On his way back to Earth, Batman also took the alien mercenary and his fox with him to hold his end of the bargain. Now, they were inside a warehouse in Gotham City. Here's your gold. You can check its weight yourself, Batman said and pointed at 2 wooden boxes on the ground. Opening their lids, Naruto saw 35 gold bars in each box, every one of them weighing 1 kilogram. He nodded in acknowledgement and took out a scroll from one of the inner pockets of the fur-collared black cloak covering his body. He spread the scroll open and placed it above the 2 boxes. After putting his hand on top of it, a small plume of smoke burst out and the 2 boxes filled with gold vanished. Nifty trick, Batman said. It was almost a compliment. He naturally understood how many possibilities such a convenient ability could bring. Thank you for the business, Naruto said professionally and then handed Batman a card. A business card? Batman asked, inwardly surprised. I'm an independent mercenary. Since there's no agency or corporation behind me, I have to advertise my services myself. Anyway, you have urgent matters to deal with, so I won't keep you. Take care, Naruto said and raised his hand for a handshake. The 2 masked men shook hands and then Naruto and Kyuubi disappeared from the warehouse with a body flicker movement. When he could not feel the 2 aliens' presence any longer, Batman looked at the business card the blonde left behind. Looks like he's done other things too besides eating since yesterday until now, he muttered. It was a black-colored card and written on it were a few lines in red, and much to his surprise, they were written in English. On the front of the business card, it was written. Intergalactic Mercenary, Uzumaki Naruto. Alias, Caterpillar. Total missions taken, 3,381. Missions completed, 3380, 99.6% completion rate. Method of contact, Lightwave XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Rescue. Assassination, scumbags only. Batman involuntarily let out a snort of amusement at the explanation written in the parentheses. Looking on the back of the card, there was a picture of a crimson-red nine-tailed demonic-looking fox. Weird alias. Batman inwardly thought. Naruto was wearing a fox-themed mask, he had a nine-tailed fox cub as a pet, and even his business card had the picture of a nine-tailed fox on it. One would think his alias would be related to foxes. Batman could not see how was a name like Caterpillar related to foxes in any way. Regardless, he did not ponder too much on it. He put the card in one of the many pockets of his utility belt and then headed towards the hideout of Lex Luthor's Injustice Gang. Asterism. An Almeration ship exited Earth's atmosphere and headed towards the edge of the Sol system at a constant speed, in a straight line. There were only 2 people on board, a blonde-haired man and a red fox. So, what's the plan now? QB asked. Naruto was sitting on a chair, browsing through the rather lengthy list of jobs that various information brokers and other organizations that he was in partnership with had sent him. He had been at it for the past 2 hours. It was completely unlike him. Normally, he was a decisive man when it came to job-related things. Naruto made a slow-moving waving motion with his hand in front of his face, and the white Anbu-style fox mask started to disperse in a shower of particles of light. The reason why he could even eat without taking his mask off was that the mask was not an actual, physical object but a jutsu that he had created, one that he could easily control at will. It was a jutsu that he created primarily not to disguise his identity, though it was good at it since not even Superman could see through it with his X-ray vision, but to solve the problem that poisonous gases and the lack of oxygen, which meant that he could now survive in hostile environments with no issues and even underwater. It was something that he had created out of necessity after going through countless dangerous places during his travels across the universe. When the mask dispersed, the previously blue eyes became red and his sun-kissed blonde hair took on a darker tint too, becoming a strawberry blonde color, almost red. As for his face, it had not changed too much since his teenage years. The more noticeable differences would be that the whisker-like marks on his cheeks had become darker and thicker, and that, between his eyebrows, 2 rather deep frown wrinkles could be seen. He looked like a man in his mid-20s. When the mask disappeared, Naruto rubbed his face with his palms and sighed. I don't know. I don't even know what job to take or if I should take any job at all. The reason why he had become a mercenary was that he needed a way to finance his expeditions. Intergalactic travel was very expensive. Ships capable of interstellar travel, their maintenance costs, the fuel, the weapons to equip them, information, all those things were not cheap at all, regardless of the galaxy. No, their prices were exorbitant, hence also the reason why his services were rather expensive too. But now that he realized that finding a way back home was impossible, he was at a loss of what to do. You've searched enough, Naruto. Almost a century is more than enough. Even if you went back now, what would you go back to? Everyone in your generation has long since passed away. You know as well as I do that shinobi don't live long lives. Naruto frowned at those words. It had become a habit for him, and that was the reason why the frown lines between his eyebrows were so pronounced. Don't tell me you've forgotten what happened 88 years ago, Kurama. It's the reason why I don't look a day over 25. For me, it was only 1 hour, but when I came out, almost 50 years had passed in the outside world. At those words, the hair all over Kyuubi's back and his 9 tails became straight like needles as a series of chills went down his back. At that time, Kyuubi had still been sealed inside Naruto as the two of them had not managed to find a way to let Kyuubi out without killing Naruto until he was in his late 40s. However, through Naruto's eyes, he could see and experience the outside world, just like Naruto could. The sight he had seen that day would forever be ingrained in his brain. It was something that neither he nor Naruto would ever be able to forget. Nonetheless, Kyuubi did not want to back off. I know what hope you've been clinging on for the past century, time dilation. You've been hoping that while a century has passed here, maybe, just maybe, no more than a day had passed in the elemental nations. 1. But forget about a day, just think about 1 hour. No, even 5 minutes. Who could survive against the rabbit goddess after she kicked us out of the dimension? You think that Uchiha could? Or that useless woman you used to have a crush on? Or maybe your sensei? Hell, at that time, even you wouldn't have been able to last all alone against Kaguya for 5 minutes. Shut up. Naruto shouted incensed. The amount of chakra that his mere shout contained made the entire warship shake terribly. Kyuubi scoffed, not in the least intimidated. But he still chose to give up on his tiny fox cub form, and his body enlarged until he was several feet tall, making the control room barely accommodate his enormous size. His voice became even more powerful and demonic when he spoke next. You don't like to hear the truth, eh? Here, I'll spell it for you. Everyone is dead. You've been living with your mind stuck in the past for almost a century. Fighting for something that probably doesn't even exist anymore. When Kyuubi said those words, it was like Naruto had suddenly lost all his energy. He sat down on the pilot's chair and let his head fall against the steering wheel of the ship lifelessly. Inwardly, Kyuubi felt his heart crack at that sight. He cared about Naruto like his own brother. They were family. Telling Naruto such harsh words hurt him too. Forgive me, Naruto, but it had to be done. You've spent a human's entire lifetime already on a wild goose chase. It's enough. I can't watch you waste your life like that any longer. It's time to let go. Kyuubi thought in his heart. The two of them often argued and sometimes even brawled, but it was play fighting. It was very rare for them to have a serious fight. The number of times they fought ever since Kaguya had thrown them into another dimension could be counted on the fingers of one hand. And Naruto had always avoided speaking about how small were the chances of them ever going back home. He even avoided thinking about it. You were right, Kurama. I'm sorry, Naruto said. In the deafening silence that followed, the sound of his tears falling on the floor could be heard. They were big, bitter tears. Tears filled with the frustration and bitterness that he had bottled up inside of him over the past century. All this time, he had pursued his goal with tunnel vision, mindlessly. He had not allowed himself to cry, to doubt himself, or to despair. But now, his path had finally reached a dead end. He had traveled to all the known planets inhabited by humanoid creatures, all across the 3,600 sectors of the universe. He had met the oldest beings in the universe, the guardians of the universe, to ask for information, and he had even ventured to explore the unknown void of the universe, almost dying several times in the process. But it had all been for naught. He did not have any other leads. He had exhausted all his means. I was selfish. I'm sorry. I've only thought about myself. All these years, you've followed me and helped me without saying anything. And I never thought of what you might want to do. What are you talking about, you bastard? Don't make this about me. Kyuubi shouted and grabbed Naruto by the collar of his cloak. This isn't about what I want. It's about. But Kyuubi choked on his words when Naruto brought his arms around him and hugged him tightly while crying in his chest. At that moment, Naruto looked nothing like a world-famous intergalactic mercenary. He did not look like someone who had fought on equal grounds against a god and lived to tell the tale. At that moment, he looked no different than a child crying in despair. The now giant fox brought his tails around Naruto and gently laid his chin on top of his head. Apart from the sage of six paths who had died more than 1,000 years before, Kyuubi had never cared about any of the humans or beings from the elemental nation. Kyuubi had never missed his homeworld. On the contrary, the past century spent traveling the universe, especially the last 60 years, ever since they found a way to unseal him from Naruto, had been the most fun and amazing period of his millennia-long life. Traveling to new worlds, exploring unknown lands, seeing all kinds of creatures, eating so many kinds of good food. It was a life better than he had ever hoped to have even in his wildest dreams. In the elemental nations, he had been nothing but a beast hunted by humans and imprisoned to be used as a weapon of war. He had no sweet memories of it. But he understood Naruto's feelings. He was a man loyal to his loved ones to a fault. And the fourth great ninja war happened only a few weeks after the village that used to hate him had finally acknowledged him. He had become a hero and it looked like his lifelong dream of becoming a Hokage was within an arm's reach, no longer something deemed as a pipe dream. People had started to respect him and love him. But his friends, his precious people, and everything he had worked so hard for had been taken away from him when he had been thrust into an unknown world. A world that he had roamed like a vagabond for almost a century. Kyuubi could understand his despair. So he let him cry. Despite the mucus and tears staining his beautiful fur, Kyuubi did not say a word of reproach. It's alright, Naruto, it's alright. Let it go. A long but rather narrow and sinuous lake surrounded by tall and steep mountains on all sides. It was a fjord, a place of rarely seen beauty. A simple wooden boat was floating gently on top of the water, and on the boat there was a red-eyed man with thick and dark whisker-like marks on his cheeks. Despite his rather scary-looking face, there was an aura of peace and calmness around him. With a straw hat on his head and a fishing rod in his hands, the young man looked as though he was one with nature, an integral part of it. It was as though the passage would be incomplete without him. All of a sudden, with a quick jerk of his wrists, he pulled on the fishing rod in his hands. An enormous yellow fish about 25 feet long cast a shadow over the lake when it was yanked out of the water. It was even larger than the man's wooden boat. But there was no panic in the man's red eyes. With practiced movements, he threw 5 shurikens at the large fish still in midair. The 5 shurikens moved almost as though they were remote-controlled drones, not thrown projectiles, and they started flying in circles around the fish. Then, the man clenched his fist and 5 very thin metallic wires appeared in his hands seemingly out of nowhere. They had been connected to the thrown shurikens from the beginning. Before the fish even started to fall, arcs of lightning traveled through the wires and zapped the large fish to death. Although the fish was now dead and the lightning had dispersed by the time the fish dropped back into the water, its body was still twitching, disturbing the previously still surface of the lake. But soon, the fish became immobile, its nerves finally ceasing their activity. The fisherman tied the metallic wires connected to the fish on one end of the wooden boat, and then he grabbed the paddles and started to slowly move towards the shore. On the shore, a giant bonfire was burning merrily and a 9-tailed fox that was as big as a horse was pacing around restlessly. The man and the fox in question were none other than Naruto and Kyuubi. They were in the midst of enjoying their holiday alone, on an unknown planet, away from civilization. It was a planet from outside of the 3,600 sectors of the known universe protected by the Green Lantern Corps, in a star system located in the unknown void. Its living conditions were nearly identical to the Earth, but there were no sentient creatures on this planet. There were only animals, and because of that, nature was rich and pristine. It was Naruto and Kyuubi's secret refuge, a place where they sometimes went to heal their souls and rest. Asterism. 1 hour later, more than half of the enormous fish had already been cooked and eaten by the two of them. More exactly, it was Kyuubi that had eaten almost everything by himself. Lost in his greed and gluttony, he had even increased his size to that of an elephant so he could take bigger bites out of the fish and eat more at once. In contrast to the voracious fox, Naruto was sitting cross-legged on the grassy ground with his eyes closed. As he drew in the natural energy of the planet, he periodically exhaled a grayish-black cloud through his mouth. Once every few years Naruto came here to expel the impurities that his body accumulated by drawing in the natural energy of the planets that were inhabited by sentient species. Whenever he used his sage mode on such planets, he would draw on the polluted, infected energy of nature. It did not have an immediate effect on him if it was in small doses, but if left it unattended, or if he drew too much of that infected energy at once, he could become like Jugo from the elemental nations and go berserk. Or worse, instead of going berserk, he could turn into a statue if he lost control of the natural energy in his body. He had gone through that in the past once, so he was careful to not repeat his mistakes again. I love this planet. Such pure nature, such calmness, such peace. Naruto opened his eyes and said, I feel like any sage mode user would be able to prolong their lifespan by decades if not even centuries simply by living here. The elephant-sized fox's voice boomed from the bonfire. It's not about the duration of one's life but its quality. Look at me, I've lived for 1,000 years, but the last 60 to 70 years since you unsealed me from your body had been the best of my entire life. If I had to choose between the previous 1,000 years in the elemental nations and 70 years in this dimension, I'd choose this new world in a heartbeat. You're right, Naruto acknowledged. This planet is beautiful, pure and peaceful, but there is nothing to do here. It's nice to come and rest once in a while, but living here alone for years or decades. Most sentient living beings desired the companionship of other people. And Naruto was no different. Although he no longer got emotionally attached to persons and places, he still enjoyed living with people. He liked interacting with others, joking around, visiting restaurants, going to movie theaters, and sometimes he liked even to just go to a bazaar and watch people haggle and argue with each other for prices. Although people had a very dark side to them, they had beautiful parts too. And the more he lived, the more Naruto understood that these two sides of people were like the two sides of a coin. One could not exist without the other. As Naruto was sunken deeply into his philosophical thoughts about people's nature, a very loud beeping sound came from a small distance away. It came from the combat suit that he had left in a hut that he and his shadow clones had built when they arrived on this planet a few weeks before. Now, he was wearing casual clothes, a pair of brown pants and a light blue t-shirt. He had no weapons or any other devices on him except for the armband that contained the shurikens and ninja wire that he used in fishing. He sighed in annoyance, these guys don't know how to give up. He went to his hut and took out a wristwatch. Then, he covered his face with his hand and made a downward motion with it. A white Anbu fox mask appeared on his face and his strawberry blonde hair became bright gold while his red eyes became baby blue. Then, he tapped the screen of the wristwatch with a finger and a hologram appeared on top of it. It was a human-sized humanoid rat. A high-pitched voice came out. Seriously, Mr. Uzumaki, where have you been these past 4 months? You didn't give us an update on your location and most of the time we couldn't even reach you through the lightwave. We've been so worried that... The hologram of the talking rat abruptly disappeared when Naruto cut off the transmission. But 2 seconds later, the wristwatch started beeping again. Hey, why did you hang up on me, huh? Here I am, all concerned about your well-being and that's how you treat me. You ingrate. If the mask didn't cover his face, one would be able to see that a vein started to pulse on Naruto's forehead. Alright, I'll cut the transmission and switch off the lightwave receptor. No, wait, the rat man yelled frantically. He calmed down when he saw Naruto did not follow up on his threat and said unhappily. Sheesh, you're as grumpy as ever. No pleasantries, no joking around, nothing. Get to the point already. Naruto couldn't help shouting. I do joke around with most people but you're just so irritating. Why do I even put up with you? A smug expression appeared on the rat man's face at the blonde's outburst. It's simple, because I'm the best at what I do. Naruto let out a snort but did not contradict him. Look, I know you said you need some time on your own, but we've got a huge job on our hands this time. To be more exact, 2 huge jobs. With the payment from these 2 bounties, you'll probably be able to even buy a fleet of ships strong enough to take over a planetary system. Or legally buy a small-sized terraformed moon. When Naruto remained silent, the rat man said in exasperation. I hate it so much when I can't gauge your reaction because of that creepy mask of yours. After a few seconds of silence, Naruto spoke. I told you I'm retired. At least for now. I don't really have a need for money. I have enough money to live in peace for a long time. I don't care about conquering planetary systems and whatnot either. As for owning a moon, he trailed off and started to chuckle. He already had a planet twice as large as the Earth with perfect living conditions and nobody to mess up its nature and ecosystems. It was like a paradise. What was a mere moon compared to that? Come on, just this once. I really need you to take this job, don't do me like this, man, the rat man almost begged. Naruto covered the forehead of his mask with his right hand and sighed, not knowing whether to laugh or to cry. What did you do this time? Did you gamble your wife and your kids and lost again? It was not a joke, nor an exaggeration what Naruto asked. The rat man in the hologram was a degenerate gambler, someone that actually had really gambled his wife and 6 kids and lost them in a game. Granted, it was proven that the other party had been cheating and he didn't truly lose his family in the end, but the fact that he was willing to gamble away his family for money spoke volumes of what type of person he was. The rat man fidgeted as if he did not know how to explain himself. I took the payment in advance for those jobs and I've already spent that money. But don't worry, getting that money back is not an issue. At all. I swear on my honor. A gambler's honor. PFFT. Naruto inwardly said but stayed silent and let him continue. The problem is that 1 month has already passed since I accepted those bounties on your behalf and they told me they don't need their money back. Either we complete the mission or they will send the Gordanians after me. Naruto felt the beginning of a huge headache. Anything involving the Gordanians was going to be nasty. They were infamous for being a warmongering race hell-bent on conquering and enslaving other planets. Explain. That single word made the rat man tremble. He understood that Naruto was slowly getting pissed and he also knew better than most people that as easygoing and amiable Naruto seemed to be, it was a terrible thing when he got truly angry. A few minutes later, when the rat man was done explaining and anxiously waiting for the verdict, Naruto asked. So, the first job you accepted was from the Scions. They want me to capture someone for them to experiment on him. Tell me, Rui Nak, when have I ever accepted any jobs from those bastards? Mr. Uzumaki, please don't get angry. The rat man, now named Rui Nak, said quickly, desperately trying to stop Naruto from getting angrier at him than he already was. I've checked the past of that bounty target. I spent a lot of resources for that, but I did find out that he's caused several world wars and genocides in his homeworld. Whatever the Scions will do to him, he fully deserves it. Feeling that Naruto was mollified by his explanation, Rui Nak continued. As for the second job, I took it especially because it was connected to the first one. The king of Tamaran sold his youngest daughter to the Gordanians, as a slave, for the sake of peace. But the queen of Tamaran, his wife, secretly put out a bounty to rescue her daughter. My sources tell me that the Gordanians demanded the princesses of the royal family of Tamaran at the request of the Scions. So you mean to say I'll be hitting 2 birds with 1 stone? Rui Nak nodded vigorously. Exactly. You can capture the target of the bounty offered by Scions and after you hand him over to them, you can also raid their base and rescue the princess of Tamaran. Naruto hummed in thought. I'll need you to send me all the data you have on the bounty offered by the Scions. I will be the one to decide if the target really is a scumbag or not. Absolutely. The rat man said eagerly. Asterism. A few hours later, Naruto was sitting next to a campfire with his back resting against a tree as he read on a tablet the information that Rui Nak had sent him in regards to not only the Scions bounty but also the current state of affairs in Tamaran, the Gordanians' attack, and the enslaved princess. This guy really is the best at what he's doing, but sometimes I feel like I wanna strangle him to death, Naruto said in annoyance. Rui Nak was an information broker, one of the best, if not the best, in the galaxy. Naruto was not the only bounty hunter in partnership with him. Even Lobo took bounties from him once in a while. Rui Nak was not subordinated to anyone. He was a free agent, simply selling information to anyone who paid him. In spite of his despicable morals and degenerated persona, as a businessman, Rui Nak was excellent. He was an extremely well-connected person. There was not an inhabited planetary system or prison planet in the 3,600 sectors of the known universe where he did not know a guy or two. He made it his job to learn all about the latest bounties posted by the major powers of the galaxy and contact the bounty hunters that might be interested in them. The bounty hunters were happy to get a juicy job, the clients were happy to have their problems solved, and Ruinak himself was happy to get a hefty commission from the bounty hunters and even from the clients themselves if they contacted him directly. The Rat Man was not the sole information broker operating on an intergalactic level, but he was among the best. He's definitely not gonna get even one coin as commission from my reward after the shit he pulled. QB was curled up very close to the fire in his tiny form as a fox cub and yawned lazily every once in a while. You could have just ignored him and not taken the job. But you couldn't help playing the hero again, eh? QB jabbed at him. Naruto glared at the fox and said in retort, "What hero? I'm getting paid for it. Not to mention, we've worked together for so many years. MHM. Keep telling yourself that." Seeing Naruto becoming silent at his words, QB asked, "So, where are we going now?" "To Earth. What would the Scions want from Earth?" QB raised his head from his front paws and asked, appearing as though he was very intrigued. "Apparently, it's someone who has lived for nearly 50,000 years. He's the one who caused the 2 deadliest wars in Earth's history and numerous other atrocities. A human named Vandal Savage. I think the Scions will dissect him to the last atom to see what makes him tick, what gave him immortality when everyone else on Earth lives up to a century at most. Didn't think we'd get back to Earth so soon. Not that I have anything against it, mind you," QB said, and the 9 fluffy tails at his back started wagging. Naruto grinned when he looked at the tiny fox's unveiled excitement. "Oh ho, you look excited. I wonder why. My bet is that you can't wait for that woman to give you some belly rubs again," he said snidely. "Why you?" QB sputtered at the unexpected verbal attack. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Oh really now? Then tell me, what's the tail wagging for?" QB bit on his own treacherous tails in embarrassment. At the memory of the blissful feeling from the Amazon princess' gentle caresses, his tails had involuntarily started wagging on their own, out of his control. QB did not understand himself why he had liked it that much. He did not know that it was because of the gift that the Olympian goddess of the hunt and wilderness had blessed Wonder Woman with. If only the people from our homeworld could see this, the mighty QB no Kitsune, the strongest Biju in existence, wagging his tails like a dog and purring like a cat from a simple belly rub. "You were so cute, so adorable, wahahaha." But as he laughed out loud, Naruto suddenly jumped up to his feet and, immediately after, he leapt into the tree behind him. From there, he broke into a mad dash, shinobi jumping from one tree to another as quickly as he could. That's because a gigantic 9-tailed fox, the mighty QB in his original form as a tailed beast, had suddenly smashed the spot he had been sitting on before with his immense claws. Hundreds of feet tall and wide, and 9 tails that were just as huge as his main body. Even the enormous trees of that virgin planet were dwarfed by his gigantic size. Now, he was a behemoth. "Naruto, don't let me get my hands on you." QB's demonic roar rang, and the shockwaves of his roar flattened to the ground the forest around him for miles. In his original form, the 9-tailed demon fox truly was like a natural disaster, a calamity. But in front of that terrible might, obnoxious laughter could be heard in the distance, just as loud as his roar. Naruto had purposely infused his chakra in his voice, to make sure that the fox heard it. "How dare you burst in and ruin my wedding?" a petite blonde woman said accusatorily. In front of her, behind the locked bars of a cell, a tall and athletic woman was chained up to the wall with a pair of very high-tech shackles that even someone of her strength could not break. She was none other than Wonder Woman. "Aren't you even curious about what Savage is up to? He's dangerous. Why, do you think he might throw a tank through my wall?" The blonde woman crossed her arms and said sarcastically. Only a few hours ago, Wonder Woman had crashed the blonde woman's wedding by throwing a tank through the walls of the church where the ceremony was being held. It was the wedding of Vandal Savage and Princess Audrey, the daughter of King Gustav, the ruler of Kaznia. Grow up. He's obviously using you. He's amassing military and political power. For what? What do you think? He's got to be stopped. Wonder Woman shouted, finally reaching the end of her patience. You're a raving lunatic. Not to say you weren't fun to go clubbing with. This isn't a joke, Audrey. I think Savage is responsible for your father's sudden illness. Wonder Woman tried to reason with her, but the princess, now queen, shot back angrily. And I think you've just crossed a line. Don't walk away, Audrey. You're making a big mistake. I can do whatever I please. Surely, you've noticed by now. She shot back and strolled out of the prison without sparing her another glance. Wonder Woman frowned and started to struggle once more to break her shackles, but it was to no avail. Just then, a bizarre feeling washed over her, a sensation that made her become very alert. While she did not know what to make of it, she heard the sound of a man's footsteps approaching her cell. What are you doing here? Wonder Woman said, greatly surprised. A white Anbu fox mask, blonde hair, a fur-collared black cloak that covered his entire body, and a tiny fox cub curled up on his right shoulder, looking as though it was glued to it. The newcomer was none other than the alien mercenary that had rescued and extorted Superman of a huge sum of money. But almost 6 months had passed since then, and Wonder Woman had almost forgotten about the strange alien and his gluttonous talking fox. She had certainly not expected to see him again, much less at that moment, in the prison inside the royal castle of Kaznia. Why is it that whenever I meet one of you guys, you're locked up in a cell? Naruto said with a laugh. When he had met Superman, the Kryptonian had been locked up by the Preserver in a cell. Now when he was meeting Wonder Woman again after half a year, she was locked up in a cell too by Vandal Savage. At first, Wonder Woman's intention had been to ask for help, but she was getting increasingly weirded out by the situation. What are you doing on Earth? How are the guards right next to you not reacting to your presence? Did Vandal Savage somehow hire you? She asked in a low voice. Naruto waved a hand as to reassure her and said, Don't worry. Vandal Savage is not my employer. He's my bounty. As for why these men can't see me, they're under an illusion. Something like a spell. It turned out that the strange sensation she was feeling and her instinctual alertness were due to the illusion that he had cast. Is what you said to that bratty princess earlier true? Is Vandal as bad as you claim? He asked. Yes. He's the one who orchestrated World War II and caused the deaths of millions of people. She's not lying, QB whispered. Due to his negative emotions sensing, no lies or negative emotions could escape his radar. Naruto had read up on the data about Vandal Savage that Ruinak had provided to him, but he always researched the veracity of his information by interacting with the locals and doing some research of his own on site. He never trusted someone's words blindly. All right, thank you, Naruto said and stepped away, about to leave. Hey, don't just leave, help me out. When Naruto stopped in his tracks but did not immediately say anything, Wonder Woman added quickly, thinking that he was going to try to extort her of money too, as he had done with Superman half a year ago. If you want gold, I'll give you as much gold as you want. She was the princess of the Amazons. She may not be as rich as a billionaire like Batman, but the Amazons had enough treasures and ancient artifacts for her to live in luxury like not many other women on Earth could afford. She just chose not to because of her upbringing as a warrior. Sorry, princess, no can do. I have a feeling that if I let you out of this cell, you'll try to get in my way and stop me from doing my thing. Seeing the furious glare she threw at him, Naruto involuntarily chuckled. Relax. One of your hero friends, I think Batman was his name, is actually hiding just a few feet away. I think he's been waiting for a chance to break you out from your cell, but he fell under my genjutsu like the rest of the guards. Unlike you, who seem to have some innate resistance to magic, he's just an ordinary man. Anyway, once I collect my bounty, I'll release the illusion and he'll free you too. With that, he waved goodbye merrily and left. Hey, wait, Wonder Woman shouted after him, but he just continued to walk. But as Naruto left the cell behind him, QB suddenly jumped off his shoulder. Yo, Kurama, what's up? You go ahead and capture that Muppet. I'll catch up a bit later. QB said. Naruto looked at him strangely. Not a word. QB growled threateningly, but Naruto would not be himself if he didn't poke fun at him when he had the chance. You like her. Shut up. Just get going and stop wasting time. QB barked at him. After that, although Naruto did not continue to tease him, his chortles made QB gnash his teeth. Though he could not fully understand it himself, QB had an inexplicable feeling of attachment to the woman. It was ridiculous to him as well to believe that it was all because of just a belly rub. In truth, QB's feeling of attachment to Wonder Woman was not a strong bond or anything like being willing to put himself in danger for her sake. It was just goodwill. But that slight goodwill he felt for her was significant enough for him to not be comfortable with ignoring her plight like he would normally do with other humans. In the first place, it would not cost him anything to just release Wonder Woman from her shackles once Naruto accomplished his mission. Asterism. Although his masking technique made his eyes look blue, in reality, currently, his eyes were red and his pupils looked like a cross between a slit and a horizontal bar. At that moment, every single life signature in the castle was as clear in his perception as though he could see them with his own eyes. Due to his Sage mode, it was a piece of cake for Naruto to find Vandal Savage's location because his life signature was clearly different from other humans. It was quite similar to that of the Amazon princess locked in the cell, not quite as strong, but still similar. Is that woman immortal like Vandal Savage too? Immortal like me? Naruto asked himself intrigued. When he had come to Earth the first time around he had not used his Sage mode as he had had no reason to. Unless it was for the sake of a mission, he would generally prefer to not use his Sage mode on the planets inhabited by sentient creatures due to the high degree of pollution of nature and the harmful effects that drawing such infected energy would have on him when taken in large doses. Soon enough, he reached the control room. In a puff of smoke, his body transformed into that of a housefly. Henge was one of the first and easiest techniques that Shinobi used to learn back in his homeworld. Even 10-year-old kids could perform it. But, despite its simplicity, it was invaluable for any spy, sabotage, or assassination missions that had to be completed covertly. Vandal, what do you think you are doing? The new Queen of Casnia asked in disbelief. Just a few moments before that, Colonel Vox, Vandal Savage's right-hand man, had confirmed the destruction of the Justice League's spacecraft. Destroying the Justice League. Building a railgun. Assuming total dominion over the nations of the Earth. Vandal Savage said from his throne-like seat. Then, he chuckled. Sweet foolish child. Wonder Woman was right all along. Ridiculous. You'd have to be over 100 years old. Queen Audrey said in denial. I'm far older than that, Vandal Savage boasted. It was over 25,000 years ago when I got this power. While my fellows cowered with fear, I dared to approach the strangely glowing rock that fell from the sky. It was warm and the night was very cold. I slept curled up next to it, not realizing what its radiation would do to me. But over the millennia that followed, as I watched those around me grow old and die while I remained unchanged, I discovered the truth. I came to accept my destiny, I live to rule. Delusions of grandeur aside, I rule Casnia. Queen Audrey shot back. That's why I married you, Vandal Savage said smugly. It's also why I poisoned your father. You poisoned my father. She yelled and slapped him with all of her strength, leaving a trail of bloodied scratches on his face. But after Vandal Savage grabbed her arms and immobilized her, she grew shocked when she saw the clawed skin of his cheek heal up in a second. Guards, confine this brat to her quarters. At his words, 2 soldiers grabbed the young queen roughly and started to drag her outside. But everyone in the room froze when a masked man appeared behind Savage Vandal out of nowhere. The self-entitled king of Casnia suddenly found his feet leaving the ground when a steel-like hand clenched around his neck and lifted him in the air. A perfect Russian came out of the masked man's mouth. My mission was to capture you and hand you over in a perfect condition, but trash like you doesn't deserve to live even as a lab rat. At that moment, the soldiers in the control room and Colonel Vox woke up from their stupor and immediately started to yell as they pointed their weapons at him. Release him immediately. Vandal Savage also struggled to say despite his throat being choked. Whatever you were paid, I'll give you double. No, triple. But just as his words ended, Naruto's other hand clenched into a fist and punched a hole into his back, through his chest, obliterating his heart. A large amount of blood splattered over Queen Audrey and the 2 guards that had been the closest to him. The woman screamed in terror and she lost strength in her legs. The guards themselves were petrified and could not keep a hold of her as she collapsed on the floor. Kill him. Colonel Vox hollered and then he opened his mouth wide and initiated his sonic scream. But even before the sound waves could reach their target, a blade of pressurized air separated his head from the rest of his body. The other soldiers in the room became still like statues. They did not dare to even move a muscle. In the deathly silence that was instilled, a sudden coughing noise came from Vandal Savage's previously lifeless body. I am immortal. Cough, I can't be killed. There is nothing, absolutely nothing that you can do to me. As he said that, Vandal Savage even broke into raspy laughter. But his laughter died in his throat when another blade of wind beheaded him too like his subordinate. What do you know, I got to kill you twice and even complete my bounty too. This must be my lucky day. Naruto chuckled. Let's see how you're going to revive in an inanimate space, devoid of air, where even time doesn't exist. He took out 2 sealing scrolls from his cloak and unfurled them unhurriedly. Without even looking at the soldiers, he warned them. Don't make any moves. Don't give me a reason to kill you. What a joke. The soldiers around were scared to even breathe too loud, let alone entertain any thoughts of acting against him at that moment. They were just average humans while, in their eyes, he looked like a demon. Even the bratty queen, Audrey, had none of her previous haughtiness. Her face was livid as she watched him, too terrified to move even an inch from where she had fallen. But Naruto himself could not care less about anyone else in the room. He had no interest in killing the others. He had been a shinobi in the past. In a way, he had been military as well. He knew that the soldiers were only following orders. Nevertheless, if they were to shoot at him, he would show no mercy, like with Colonel Vox. He threw one of the scrolls on Vandal Savage's head and the other one on the rest of his body, making them vanish in 2 small clouds of white smoke. Bringing a finger to his left ear, Naruto spoke. Aight, Kurama, I'm done here. Kiss your girlfriend goodbye and meet me at the ship. She's not my girlfriend, you piece of, Kyuubi yelled into his earpiece, but Naruto cut off the connection with a chuckle. After he grabbed the 2 sealing scrolls from the floor and pocketed them inside his cloak, he disappeared, leaving only a few arcs of yellow and black light flickering in his wake. Asterism. A few minutes after Naruto teleported away from the room, Batman and Wonder Woman burst through the doors of the control room. But they only found an obscene amount of blood splattered everywhere. Soaked with Vandal Savage's blood, Queen Audrey was still lying on the floor with a blank look on her face, while the rest of the soldiers in the room were looking at each other filled with helplessness and uncertainty. They did not know what they were supposed to do in that situation. Despite Queen Audrey's previous behavior towards her, Wonder Woman came to her and asked kindly, Audrey, can you tell me what happened? But the blonde woman was in shock. She was incapable of speech at that moment, just staring blankly at the pool of blood on the floor. You. Tell me what happened here. Batman ordered one of the soldiers. After getting the full story from the soldier, Batman's hands clenched into fists. Not for the first time since he had joined the Justice League, he had found out the hard way what it meant to be a part of a team of superheroes while he had no superpowers himself. He had fallen prey to the alien mercenaries' illusion technique without even being aware of it, just like the men guarding Wonder Woman's cell. Batman was confident about fighting against anyone if he was allowed enough time to prepare and make plans. But without preparation time, in front of an unexpected situation, he was too vulnerable. He was only human. Even more alarming for Batman than falling into Naruto's illusion was that Martian Manhunter at the Watchtower had not detected an alien ship approaching the Earth. That was a massive breach in the defense. What if this time around, the alien mercenaries' mission had been to capture the President of the United States instead of the ruler of Kaznia? What would have happened? The Justice League had been created primarily with the purpose of protecting the Earth from the aliens that would try to invade. If aliens could come to Earth and wreak havoc as they pleased, then what did the Justice League even exist for anymore? They had to take action, and they had to do it fast. Wonder Woman, let's go. We have to meet with the rest of the Justice League immediately. But Audrey is. I can't just leave her like that. She is in no condition to. Batman glared at her, and although he did not shout, the words he spoke were very sharp. What's more important? Consoling a spoiled little girl or making sure the Earth is safe? I thought you knew better than that. Wonder Woman looked at him startled. The rough way in which Batman spoke to her now was unlike him. She thought that the two of them had become a little closer after sharing a dance yesterday at the engagement party of then Princess Audrey and Vandal Savage. But Wonder Woman had no way of knowing just how rattled Batman was because of his vulnerability as a human, and that he was not exactly calm at that moment. She thought that Batman was acting like an asshole to her on purpose, to distance himself from her. Because he had done that a few times over the past year since she joined the Justice League. He had even made it clear once that he did not want anyone else in his life, especially not a teammate. In the end, Wonder Woman did not comment anything about her hurt feelings. She chose to stay silent and followed Batman to their javelin to meet with the rest of the Justice League at the Watchtower. However, in her heart, she gave up on any thoughts she might have had about a possible relationship with Batman. He was a good man with qualities worthy of admiration such as his courage, tenacity and resourcefulness, but, in the end, Wonder Woman was a valiant warrior and a princess blessed by the gods themselves. She was not a weak and needy woman that would blindly and endlessly chase someone that did not want her. She was Diana, princess of the Amazons. She had her pride and dignity too. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.